Today in the show, we have the House of Mouse headlines brought to you by laughingplace.com, your up-to-date resource for the latest Disney news every day of the week. This episode is being released on May 31st, 2023, and here's what's been going on in the world of Disney recently. Disney Plus doubles back on a bad decision, Disneyland Paris cast members strike on Main Street, a summer without Fantasmic at Disneyland, and more.
Hear the latest news from the Walt Disney Company in today's House of Mouse headlines.
Walt Disney World is celebrating its pass holders with a number of offerings as part of V.I.PASSHOLDER days. From today through June 30th, the pass holder merchandise discount at select Disney-owned and operated merchandise locations across the resort will temporarily increase from 20% to 30%. Additionally, APs will receive 20% off at select EPCOT outdoor kitchens when using a cashless form of payment. Also at EPCOT, a new Figment magnet will be available for pickup at the Creation Shop. By the way, as of this recording, Walt Disney World annual passes are still available, so even new pass holders can take advantage of these perks and others in June. At long last, an unimpeded view across World Showcase Lagoon has returned to Epcot. Following the closure of Harmonious in April, all of the barges used for the show have been removed. As you surely know, these massive fixtures were a major source of scorn and mockery among Disney fans, and likely also hurt the overall reception of Harmonious. Currently, Epcot Forever is performing on the Lagoon, while an all-new show is set to debut later this year. Bad, but also potentially good news for Fantasmic fans has arrived following the accidental dragon fire that occurred at the Disneyland Resort last month. Now, the show isn't expected to return until at least Labor Day in September. However, according to Disney, the extra time is being used to find, quote, opportunities to add new magic and touches for guests to enjoy. In the meantime, the resort says it's actually exploring alternate entertainment offerings for this summer. Additionally, all impacted cast members will be used in other roles at the resort. Although Disneyland Magic Key holders continue to need to make reservations for every visit, unlike their East Coast counterparts, adjusting these reservations did finally get a bit easier. Recently, the resort announced an update that will allow guests to modify the date and/or park of their theme park reservations on Disneyland.com without having to cancel the reservation first. To be clear, this feature is available to all guests, although Magic Key holders are clearly likely to see the most benefit from it. On that note, day guests will be able to make modifications to their theme park reservations up to the day of their reservation before they enter the theme park, while Magic Key holders will continue to have a one-day modification window. Of course, modified reservations will still be subject to availability, blockouts, etc. Still, this small change is a welcome one for Disneyland Resort visitors. With the live-action Little Mermaid now in theaters, one of the stories going around is how a new song sung by Javier Bardem's King Triton was cut from the film. Now, the song entitled Impossible Child can be heard, but only on a version of the soundtrack sold by the Home Shopping Network. Currently, an exclusive edition of the album featuring the unreleased track can be purchased on hsn.com for $14.98. It's currently unclear if the song will eventually make its way to streaming or elsewhere, but for now, those who want to hear it can purchase this piece of physical media. Ariel and friends have swum their way over to McDonald's. That's right, Little Mermaid toys are now featured with the fast food chain's iconic Happy Meals. In total, there are 8 character toys featured, including Ariel, King Triton, Scuttle, Sebastian, Prince Eric, Max, Flounder, and Ursula. These under-the-sea themed toys will be available while supplies last and come right on the heels of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 toys that had been offered. So head to your nearest Golden Arches to collect one thingamabob, or 8, I guess. 8. You can collect 8 of them. Unless you want multiples, then I guess you could get 20. Yeah, one thingamabob, 28, whatever you want to get. They're there at McDonald's. Go. During Disney's recent upfront presentation, Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige offered updates on 2 Marvel Disney Plus series. First, Season 2 of Loki will kick off on October 6th. Then, and a first for Marvel, all episodes of Echo will debut on November 29th. Given the turmoil that Disney Plus has experienced as of late, fans will surely be relieved to see that these shows are still on the way this year. But the binge model for Echo does raise questions about the streamer's strategy moving forward. In any case, Marvel loyalists can look forward to these new Phase 5 entries this fall. And now it's time to bring in Kyle Burbank from laughingplace.com. How's it going, Kyle?
It's going well. It's the unofficial official summer season.
The unofficial, yeah, I guess that's true. We're recording on Memorial Day, which makes it, it actually kind of shocked me. I was at a press event at Knott's Berry Farm this past week, and of course ran into our pal Mike Celestino from Laughing Place, and like they were reopening an area of the park that had been under construction, and so like that's what the main press event was about. But then they kept being like, and our summer stuff is starting tomorrow. And I was like, wait a sec, your summer stuff? Like I couldn't comprehend that like the summer season is here, partially because the weather has been so mediocre to crappy here in Southern California. Like at this point, normally I feel like AC would be blasting 24/7, but it's been a terrible year for SoCal weather. So yeah, I guess you're right. Unofficially, the summer's here.
I do hear that area that they reopened at Knott's does look amazing, though.
They do have a new eatery that's really good, though, I will say. Anywho, let's jump into the news. It's not as crazy as a couple weeks ago. So I'll preface this by saying, folks, just in case you missed it, the last House of Mouse headlines week, there was the normal Wednesday episode, followed immediately on Thursday by another episode because on that day, some craziness dropped, including news about the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser closing, as well as news about Disney Plus removing a bunch of stuff, as well as news about Lake Nona. So if you missed it, go back and listen to 2 episodes 2 weeks ago. And then, of course, this past week's regular Wednesday episode. So there's stuff to catch up on. But we're going to start with some of that news that we kind of talked about already. But we got new details behind the imminent closure of Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser. Now, apparently, Disney considered a number of plans to fix the situation, such as tours of the facilities for those already staying at Walt Disney World, with access to the bar, dinner show, and gift shop. Another option was to retheme the entire hotel to The Mandalorian, with Imagineers reportedly on the site pretty recently looking at ways that they could retrofit or change the experience. But ultimately, these plans were supposedly shut down by Disney CEO Bob Iger. I mean, this is kind of stuff that we discussed, right? Like, my big thing was, why wasn't there a plan B? And when we kind of armchair Imagineered what could it be, these were the things. New show, make it a hotel, give tours, make it access to Walt Disney World. So, I mean, that's what they were thinking, but I guess a tax break's better than trying again, right?
I guess so, yeah. I guess he's just in write-down mode. I do wonder, and I think a lot of people wonder, whether the fact that, that this was launched under Chapek is part of that decision-making, or if maybe those options were kind of still keeping the experience what it was, but then still doing either like an immersive experience or having the immersive experience, but then having people come in to kind of supplement your revenue. And it sounds like I don't think this rules out the idea of just stopping that entirely and just making it a Star Wars themed hotel like everyone already thought it was. I don't think that I don't know how the write-offs work, but I still think while the Galactic Starcruiser is done, I could still imagine ways that they could turn this into a usable boutique hotel.
Yeah, I think it's going to be just sitting there for at least a year is my guess. My guess is they can't do anything with it in order to get the breaks that they're looking to get. But I don't know, it's all kind of interesting. And once again, even if they rethemed it to Mandalorian, that doesn't lower the price. Not unless they were going to make it a one-night excursion. But here's the other thing that I find so interesting. And don't get me wrong, of course, The Mandalorian is very, very popular. But there's this weird resistance, no pun intended, from the Walt Disney Company to not use the original trilogy. And isn't that what people keep saying they want? They own it now. So, like, why not put this, if they were going to retheme it, if that was a plan, why not just retheme it to the original trilogy?
I was actually talking to my wife about this earlier, and
I love that those are conversations that you have with your wife.
we literally had this conversation this afternoon.
You guys are a special couple. I love you for that.
Well, because we were saying, like, I know this is a thing people keep saying, like, oh, they chose the wrong time period, but I'm not so sure about that. I think it would be weirder and less enjoyable for me. So, spoilers, if you're going to go on the Starcruiser, we all know that at the end there's a battle between Rey and Kylo. So naturally, if you're doing the original trilogy, you'd have Luke and Darth Vader. That seems weirder to me because, like, those movies are so classic that we know how it ends. Whereas at least doing it in, whatever timeline that the sequels are in, like, yeah, we know that this must be during, like, somewhere during the arc and not afterwards. But it doesn't throw me as much because it is, like, less, it's canon, but lesser canon. Does that make sense? So I think it would be, by trying to embrace it and making it more in that time period that people want, I think that it's gonna actually cheapen it in a way.
I get what you're saying. I don't think that there's not a way around it. I think, by putting it between episodes of the films, they could figure something out. But I do understand what you're saying. I think the case in point is simply they need to lower the price. And it seems like they feel like it's not worth it to lower it any more than they were already doing. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what trilogy it is. I don't think it might bring in some more people, but maybe another 6 months worth of people or another year's worth of people, not 30 years, whatever it would take to pay off this thing. So yeah, so as of right now, listen, like, we weren't all crazy. They were trying to make other plans and make other decisions, but it sounds like Papa Iger was like, hey, let's put this one to bed and just move on from here. And once again, listen, this was Chapek's baby. There may be a bit of, like, ego attached there. And then let's not forget, like, the Walt Disney Company loves to just kind of screw over the state of Florida these days for good reason. But, like, this could be related to, hey, less business in Florida. I don't think that's obviously the main
100
reason.
rooms really not making much of a dent there. So I don't think that that's a factor whatsoever. If anything, I think it just feeds the governor's narrative of go woke, go broke. He's like, oh, look, they tried, they failed. Of course, look at Little Mermaid box office totals would probably go against that. But, that's not the point. They don't look at the whole context. You just have to take your tweet, your soundbite, and move on. And so, yeah, I think if there is anything in that, I think it's the opposite way.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about some more news we were talking about the last time we got together, and that was the fact that Disney Plus started removing things from their platform. And one that was, originally revealed to be on the slate of content being pulled from Disney Plus was the documentary film Howard, focused on the real life of Howard Ashman, and of course directed by Disney legend Don Hahn. And now it's going to remain on the platform after a plethora of fan outcry, according to Deadline. For now, yeah. So listen, it was one that I think, most upset about. I think I made that pretty clear on the podcast. And then the irony, of course, that this was supposed to happen the day that Howard Ashman's, the thing that brought him to the Walt Disney Company, the live action remake of, the animated Little Mermaid, was being released on that same day.
And it's dedicated to him, as I saw in your Instagram story.
Unbelievable. Literally, I was sitting in the theater watching the credits scroll, and when it said, in memory of Howard Ashman, I was just like, 32 years later. And I wish I could do something in my life that would honor me 32 years after I was dead. Unbelievable. So yeah, so it's still on Disney Plus. I saw Don Hahn did send a message on, like, Facebook that basically said, well, it's been a hell of a 24 hours or something like that. So obviously, I don't know. I doubt that they warned these filmmakers, like, hey, by the way, we're taking your films down. So I'm sure Don Hahn probably, I don't know, I haven't spoken to him about it, but he probably found out the same way that most of us did. And, that's pretty upsetting. So listen, I'm very happy Howard is still on Disney Plus, but it doesn't make up for the fact that we've lost so many things. I saw Prop Culture was removed.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that wasn't on any list that I saw. And what I was trying to do, there's not a really good way to see everything that was removed. So what I started doing was going through the LP archives around late 2019, early 2020, and kind of seeing what we were writing about and then searching for those shows, I'm like, oh, okay, Society of Second Born Royals made the cut somehow. And Disney Family Sundays is still viewable. But yeah, I checked Prop Culture and saw that was gone. I was like, well, you didn't give me a heads up about that. Or on Hulu, Runaways, Marvel series. Also didn't see that on any list, and that was gone. So that was another disappointment.
Wow, a Marvel series. That's surprising.
And then Peacock had a special going. I don't know if it's still going, but it was like $20 for a year. So now we have Peacock for a year.
Oh, wow.
And we're watching, and of course we got the ad tier version because that's the cheaper one. And there's an ad like leaving soon. I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if Disney let you know, even in the form of an advertisement on their own platform, what was leaving soon?
Yeah, or at least, well, they can't spend they can't make ad dollars if they're doing it themselves. So there's that. But at least, next to the title, hey, last day, May, whatever, yeah, I think to just remove it is real crap. The whole thing's crappy. The good news is Howard is still there. I will say, I told you there were a couple things I wanted to go back and watch before they went away. I really only watched one, and it's probably a little surprising. I watched the Harmonious live stream.
I heard that was one that people seemed to like that better than they liked Harmonious.
Well, it was so interesting. I honestly hadn't seen any of it before, and I saw Harmonious in person once, and I was like, meh. But it was such a weird special that kind of felt like, why are they doing this? But I don't know. It was just really interesting. But it is one of those archival pieces that, there are so many. I've talked about so many of them on this podcast. So many old television specials that for so many years were just gone because they weren't being re-aired on television. That, like, bless the soul who recorded these things and uploaded them to YouTube, and we can go back and enjoy them now. But, that's not going to be the case with these, most likely. Unless somebody, ripped them or pirated them or whatever. But even still, I feel like they would get tagged on YouTube. I don't know, but it made me sad because it was like, this is a part of theme park history for archival purposes. It would be lovely to have this available. And now it isn't available. And once again, might we say, a Bob Chapek project. So yeah. A little bit of a theme going on here, it seems like. But
we rewatched the first season of Mysterious Benedict Society, which we really enjoyed. So we made sure to watch that again before it left. But I will say, while I was doing that dive back into what was coming out on Disney Plus in the early days, there were at least one show called Marvel Storyboards that was supposed to go to Disney Plus and went to YouTube instead. Oh. Still on YouTube. Would have been removed from Disney Plus. And similarly, I think Artemis Fowl was supposed to be a theatrical release. They got tired of pushing it, put it on Disney Plus. So now it also does not exist anymore. Whereas if it had a theatrical release, probably would have had a home video release. So it seemed like the right move at the time. And then now...
Yeah, it's such a mess and it's so unfortunate. And yeah, I'm not a fan of that at all, but it is what it is. We'll see what the future, lies for these projects that as of right now have just disappeared, which really sucks. So anywho, moving on May 23rd, Disneyland Paris cast members went on strike inside the park itself, canceling shows and putting on a display along Main Street, USA. The cast's ongoing fight for better pay and working conditions was the reason for this, and around 10:30 a.m., Main Street USA was cleared due to a group of striking cast members performing on stage. So I guess these people showed up for work and then just kind of like organized a strike, or they organized it
ahead of time.
Yeah, they planned it ahead of time. Like, yeah, just go to work like you're going, like normal. Because otherwise, they wouldn't let these folks in the park. And I also felt like this is something that would not be allowed in the U.S. I could totally be making that up.
No, this is quintessentially French.
Okay,
it's not. It seems like it's not that uncommon, and also, yeah, they've had different strikes there before. Usually I see, this show was canceled today because of a strike. It seems very sporadic, more like demonstrations than like when we think of a strike, we think of like the WGA. Like, we are not coming back until, and these seem to be more like demonstrations from what I'm observing, having honestly not paid that close attention to it. But yeah, definitely an interesting... you see, obviously, there's other cast members who are still working, directing guests where it's like the arcades. For those who don't know, they have these two hallways on both sides of Main Street. There's different themes. There's even like some mini attractions in one of them. So they're kind of like the bypasses that they built at Disneyland, except they're always open and way more themed and usable and everything.
So the backside of Main Street USA, the backside of the buildings, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I mean that happened. These folks were even in their costumes. You know, they're not like Tigger costumes, but you know, like Main Street cashier costumes. So yeah, that happened, and yeah, it's interesting. It's like you said, I think it's a demonstration where they make their point and they're like, okay, now back to work. It seems like.
Yeah.
So, but you know, not a great thing. I'd be very upset if I were on vacation and listen, striking for good reasons. I'm always supportive of the individual over the corporation. But, you know, shows were canceled, parades were canceled, and that sucks if you're on vacation.
I have a friend who in the past few years has been to France a couple of times, or 2 or 3 times, and every time he's there's something else. Like it's been like a rail strike or baggage handler strike. I think that one might have been in Belgium. I don't know if that was in France, but yeah, it's funny. Every time he goes to France, there's something. I was in France once for a rail strike. That's the one time I've taken the bus from De Gaulle to the resort.
Jeez, they love their strikes in France, I guess.
It wasn't a full strike. It wasn't like there wasn't train service. They were just much more limited. And because that's a tourist route to go to Disney, like they had a couple of them, but it wasn't very frequent.
Now, folks, before we move on, if you'd like to get even more from Disney Coast to Coast, be sure and check out the Disney Coast to Coast Patreon page, linked in this episode's description. There you'll find bonuses like never before heard best of compilation episodes, some unique gifts, access to live streams, and more. So go ahead, while you're listening right now, simply click on the Patreon link in the episode description of this very episode, and thank you for considering. Moving on, while Disney Parks Experiences and Products Chairman Josh D'Amaro was participating in a Q&A session at the J.P. Morgan Global Technology Media and Communications Conference, that is a mouthful, he confirmed that the plans teased as, quote, thought-provoking ideas at the D23 Expo in Anaheim last fall are in fact projects included in the proposed $17 billion investment at Walt Disney World. I mean, that's the thing that is kind of being threatened right now, right? Bob Iger's like, we may or may not spend this money. So although this
we
is
would love to.
Yeah. I would love to spend $17 billion. I actually would as well. But yeah, so this is the whole, you know, beyond Big Thunder Mountain thing. So
and the Dino Land project.
And Dino Land, yep, over in Disney's Animal Kingdom. So yeah, I mean, what was it? It was a Villains Land, it was a Coco Land, it was an Encanto Land, and then kind of a Zootopia thing over in Disney's Animal Kingdom. So I guess we may or may not see this. So it's like confirmation that, yeah, we weren't just hypothesizing. This is legitimate. This is what our plans are. But it might not happen now. So I guess we'll still just have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. For a long time, so D'Amaro has been having like little meetings here and there with some of the media and fan sites, and has said, "Oh, we have all these plans in development, like we're ready." And we're like, "Okay, well, can you announce them, please?" And it hasn't happened. So I guess this is like, okay, I kind of did tell you about them. They're a little bit firmer, and now it's tied up in this. So that kind of gives us a little bit of insight why they're not announcing things. But I feel like I can't imagine that this was the reason why they didn't announce them as being firmer at the time. Like at D23, this wasn't like as big of an issue by any means, as memory serves.
I do think that they were kind of wanted to get the audience response at D23 to a point and just see how people reacted to it. And, you know, certainly the Villains thing, the reaction was huge. And Kanto and Coco are huge right now. So that makes sense. The only thing that maybe was a little lackluster response might have been Zootopia at Animal Kingdom, but that just might be my personal response. I can't exactly remember what the moment in the room was like.
We know that the Shanghai one has exclusivity for however long, but at this point, at this rate, I'm sure that will run out. But if they do like a full-scale Zootopia thing, I think that'd be awesome. But if they're going to scale it down and just do something, then it's probably not as exciting.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Now, as we mentioned, he did make these announcements originally at D23 Expo, and I just want to mention, like, we're coming up on that time where we should be hearing about tickets for next year's D23 Expo. They typically were sold 1 year to the day in advance. I know the pandemic kind of screwed that up for the last one, but I haven't heard a peep about D23 Expo. Have you?
I have not, although I'm going to Marceline with D23 this weekend, so maybe I'll bully them.
Oh, fun. You're so cool. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is this your first time in Marceline?
This will be my first time in Marceline.
And you live so close.
And I live in Missouri. And yeah, and it wasn't even, like, there's a lot of the stuff that's happening with the D23 is public, so we were thinking about going up for that anyway, but then my friend invited me to go to the D23 thing, so I'm going to do that. Since I am no longer a member, as we are no longer a gold member, as I mentioned on the show.
Okay, so first of all, I need to give a thank you to some listeners and folks who responded. So this D23 membership stuff, you gave it up. As you know, I'm a day one charter member. I have I'm locked in because I have a full collection of the magazine and all the gifts and all that stuff. But they are doing this very annoying thing this summer where they have 3 covers of the magazine, and you are randomly you randomly get one. I got my one. It was Little Mermaid. They also have a Haunted Mansion cover and an Elemental cover. So I was like prepared to buy the others. It just shot a little message out on social media letting folks know I was looking for the others. Thank you to those of you who responded, and I should be getting them all at this point. So much appreciated because, yeah, it's very thoughtful and sweet of you to send them my way. Appreciate it. And I did get the Mickey statue, which at one point you were like, you didn't like that gift. You were like, oh, I want a better gift. I remember that was part of the reason. I got to be honest, that was one of my gifts I was looking most forward to. And usually they send these packages with some like cool stuff inside, but I don't know. I don't really sit and look through them all that much. I really should, because every time I open them, even for a little while, I'm surprised. I'm like, oh, there's some cool stuff in here. But I was looking forward to that statue. Finally got my statue. It's a little bit more plasticky than I expected, I must say. It looks good on a shelf. And oh my gosh, the packaging it came in was gorgeous. I was like, this packaging alone must have cost a fortune. It was not a small box to ship. So it was a pretty cool prize, I must say, but maybe a little cheaper than I expected. And listen, if it's not, I get it. Like having something to display, another Mickey to display is not your thing. It's not your thing. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't care for a few years ago. They used to do those boxes of copies of stuff from the archives. They're basically just giving you a box full of paper. I didn't care for those, but during the pandemic, I felt like they stepped it up. Like last year, you had a set of pins themed to like the different parks around the world, and that means a little bit more to me since I've been to all the parks around the world. So that kind of stuff I thought was cool.
Yeah, the pin stuff literally sits in the box on a shelf. So like everything's on a shelf for me. The difference is the Mickey is out and displayed, whereas the pins are sitting in their box on the shelf. So they are nice though. If you're a pins person, the pin collections are very nice and of course exclusive. So anyway, haven't heard anything about D23 Expo. We know about 25% of the staff has been laid off. I'm very curious to see what D23 Expo 2024 brings us, if anything. Is the expo done? Or maybe taking another year off? Who knows? If they do take another year off, it gets them back on their regular schedule, doesn't it?
Yeah. If D23 weren't to continue, I think what would happen, so Star Wars Celebration is already in the hands of ReedPop, which does a bunch of other conventions, New York Comic Con, C2E2, Emerald City Comic Con. I could see them doing like a Marvel convention through ReedPop, doing a Disney convention. Maybe Disney still does their own like Disney branded one and getting back to like that core, or even giving that to ReedPop. Like I could totally see them turning everything over to a third party rather than doing their own D23 expos.
This is all just theorizing, folks. So we have not heard anything. But if they were to do that, my hope would be if they were like give Marvel to ReedPop, I would hope like they would maybe continue Destination D23 and make that more of a convention. And like, because I mean, I've said many times, I want, the early years of D23 to come back where it was really like standard classic Disney sort of stuff, and maybe get rid of the Lucasfilm and the Marvel and all that other extension stuff, because I feel like it's lost its focus a bit. But I mean, I love the expo. I love seeing my friends at the expo. I would be sad if it went away altogether. It's always a fabulous production. And but yeah, if they do miss 2024 for some reason, not saying they are, but if they do, it brings it to 2025, which would get them back on their normal track because the pandemic pushed it off a year. So it'd be interesting. Anyway, more on that later, hopefully.
Going back to the Florida thing, like if they don't have things to announce, then there's not really a point to doing an expo. So I think that's probably driving it more even than the apparent and presumable turmoil that the D23 unit itself might be going through at this moment.
Do you remember the year that it aligned very nicely with like the launch of Disney Plus, and they had a whole Disney Plus panel? And that year was that was my favorite panel. I loved the Disney Plus panel. Now they could have a panel being removed from Disney Plus. We have prop culture. Say goodbye, and they could like make a whole thing out of that. Do you think that would work?
I think that would work. And then I think what they should also do is I think they should just separate, like we talked about, give Marvel to Reed Pop, maybe do your own Disney thing. They should just further segment. They should just have an expo where you get merch. You can go and buy all the friggin' merch because that's so much of the expo for some people, and then something that other people don't care about at all. So you need to have a panels D23, a merch D23, a meet and greet, get your thing signed D23, and let's just completely segment this thing up.
Or just we could have Disney stores, maybe.
We could do that, yeah. But no,
We've lost
that
it.
one. I don't know if they'd want to run themselves. We should give them the partner with Children's Place. Have them do Disney stores.
There
This
you
is a
go.
novel idea that's never happened in the history of the universe.
I think if there was to be like a Disney Plus cancellation expo stage show, what I would like it done like a la Gallagher style, where like the giant watermelons with TV shows carved into Disney Plus titles carved in the side just being smashed. Say goodbye to prop culture. I feel, honestly, I was waiting for a second season of prop culture.
We all were. After we saw those, we're like, oh, they got to make more of these.
Yeah. Anyway, we've gone way off here. So all this is happening. We'll see what happens with that. But also, Josh D'Amaro was asked at this convention that he was answered a question in regard to Disney's response to Universal Studios building smaller regional parks around the country. And D'Amaro responded by saying that while it must be an interesting idea for the teams over at Universal, it's not something that Disney is interested in doing at this time, instead focusing on investing in their existing parks and resorts.
Yeah. Seems reasonable. I will say this was actually hilarious to listen to because the question was posed as, does that sound interesting to you? And he's basically said, well, it must be interesting to them. Like the shade was fantastic, whether intended or not.
Listen, I think Universal's doing incredible work, and I don't think any shade needs to be thrown that way. And I honestly think that that's kind of tacky if that's Disney's response. But hey, whatever. Now, something I want to talk about, not because it's that exciting of news, but because I was surprised people were expecting this. Auli'i Cravalho, who was the voice of Moana in the animated film, has announced through an Instagram post that she is not reprising that role in the live-action Moana, of which she is an executive producer on. Okay, she is now 22 years old. Moana is 16. Why were people surprised by this? I never thought once that was even a possibility. And I'm surprised at kind of the outcry.
I want to go ahead and take this opportunity to let you know, I've, after a lot of consideration, decided that I will not be submitting myself for the Nobel Peace Prize this year. I understand a lot of you were looking forward to that. And I'm sorry to let you down, but it's just, I think, the best decision for everyone involved. No, I mean, I think people were wondering if she was going to be in that role. I don't know if this movie's actually going to happen. Like, it feels like something they really just pulled out and like, hey, it's in development. Like, that could mean so many things. Lots of things are in development.
So yeah, it was kind of like nothing news to me when I heard it, but I was quite surprised, and I thought it was kind of funny the way that people reacted to the news. So just wanted to mention it. Made me laugh.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Anything else you want to add, Kyle, before we get going here?
I did finish The Muppets Mayhem and really enjoyed it. I feel like there's some parts of the beginning that, like, I think the whole series is fun. In the beginning, there was some things that I was just like, this could be better. The middle, I thought, was really strong. Like episodes 4 through 7 or 8, probably 8 are my favorite, 7 being my absolute favorite. And then at the end, it wraps up nicely. Those weren't quite as strong either. But yeah, I think it really hits a stride in the middle and is worth watching. And I hope it doesn't get pulled off Disney Plus.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I haven't even started it, which is a little crazy. Haven't been watching a ton of TV lately, but I haven't even started it. I need to, because now that's kind of the fear now, right? Like the possibility that anything could go at any time is real. So it's kind of like watch it if you want to. So I do have to start that. I will say I saw the live action Little Mermaid. Kyle, did you?
No, of course not.
Really?
That's some good Disney Plus material.
Oh my gosh, Kyle. All right. Well, I have thoughts, and the listeners are going to have to wait a week to hear them, because the next episode of Disney Coast to Coast is all about the live action Little Mermaid. And it's going to be exciting. Anywho, Kyle, thanks so much. I'll talk to you again in a couple weeks. Have a fabulous night, and I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
To read more about any and all of the stories you've heard here today, simply visit the show notes link in this episode's description. You've heard the news, and now I want to hear what you have to say about it. What do you think of the recent additional details released about the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser closure news? Share your thoughts on that or any other topics mentioned in today's episode. Call 818-860-2569 and you may just hear yourself on a future episode of Disney Coast to Coast. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Disney with a Z Coast to Coast on your favorite podcast app, where episodes are available 24/7. Until next time, anything you need can be found in this episode's description. From additional information and links discussed in this episode found in the show notes, contact info to reach me, access to the show's official website, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!